Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this ancient text and uncover how a 3,000-year-old historical promise actually finds its ultimate canonical fulfillment. We're looking at Psalm 4. Now, on the surface, it's an ancient evening prayer. But as we unpack the exegesis from biblical theologian Mark Bates, you'll see this isn't just some isolated relic of the past. It's a highly dynamic text that stretches across history, acting as an archetype that ultimately points us towards something much, much larger. So, here is the big question. How does the 3,000-year-old prayer, a prayer just asking for a good night's sleep, point directly to the ultimate peace of Jesus? We are going to explore this exact mystery. We'll look at how a distressed king's prayer organically expands, literally morphs, into a cosmic blueprint. We're going to trace this journey from a literal historical crisis all the way to the New Testament. Part 1. A King in Crisis, the historical context of Psalm 4. You know, context is absolutely everything here. To really grasp the fulfillment, we first have to ground ourselves in the historical reality. King David was facing intense social conflict. Psalm 4 is intentionally paired with Psalm 3, which is a mourning lament, written when David was literally running for his life from his own son, Absalom. So picture this. The sun is going down. David, the anointed representative of Yahweh's earthly kingdom, is in exile. He's squeezed into this tight, suffocating place of distress, relying entirely on his memory of God's past deliverances to get him through the night. Now, what's really interesting here is that these aren't just common enemies. We're talking about high-ranking adversaries attacking Yahweh's earthly kingdom. The Hebrew term used is benei, sons of men. This denotes men of real rank or influence. David isn't just dealing with a ragtag mob. He is facing a severe political crisis where elites, nobles, and men of power are actively orchestrating hostility against him. And look at the exact nature of their rebellion. These elite adversaries were actively rebelling against God's covenantal order. They were trying to take the king's glory and turn it into total disgrace. They were actively loving vanity and emptiness, basically pursuing lies and delusions over Yahweh's truth. They were swapping out established truth for fraudulent schemes and alliances. And right after this in the text, there's a selah, a pause. It's a moment for the assembly to just stop, and ponder the sheer futility of all this human rebellion. Part 2. The anatomy of peace. How David responds to rebellion. So how does a king, betrayed by his own elites and running for his life, actually respond? Well, he remembers his identity. David confidently asserts that his divine election guarantees God will actively hear him. He uses the word hasid, meaning the godly or the covenant faithful one. David knows that Yahweh has set him apart. Because of this, God isn't distant or silent. When the anointed king cries out from his exile, God actively listens. That is the absolute bedrock of his peace. Instead of matching their hostility, David does something really surprising. He gives his enemies prophetic counsel. He tells them, "Be angry and tremble, but do not sin." He acknowledges their internal agitation, sure, but he demands moral restraint. He tells them to engage in silent self-examination upon their beds. Basically, take a hard look at yourself in the quiet of the night. And then he says to sacrifice the sacrifices of righteousness. He's calling for genuine internal trust and moral integrity, not just empty religious rituals. This brilliantly illustrates a stark contrast between a cynical populace and a faithful king. On one hand, you have the populace seeking material joy. They are running around looking for security in peak agricultural harvests, give us more grain, more new wine. But David knows material wealth won't sustain you in a crisis. Instead, he seeks spiritual gladness. He invokes the Aaronic blessing from Numbers 6, seeking the light of God's face. He's finding a far, far superior joy in God's presence. And because of this, David can say, "In peace I will lie down and sleep." Think about how crazy that is. He can sleep entirely defenseless out in the dark wilderness, hunted by his own son. His safety isn't secured by some massive military guard. It is provided by Yahweh alone. He knows genuine rest derives solely from the unmerited favor of God. Part 3. Echoes in the early church, Psalm 4 in the New Testament. So the crucial point here is how this exact historical experience becomes an archetype. The early Christians didn't just read this as ancient history. They applied it directly to the church. Notice how dynamically they mapped this out. Around the year 60 AD, Ephesians uses Psalm 4, quoting, "Be angry and do not sin," to establish abiding ethics for handling anger. Then in 61 AD, Philippians maps that exact structural trajectory, from distress straight to the peace of God that surpasses comprehension. And by 63 AD, Hebrews shows how David's physical safety actually prefigures the ultimate spiritual Sabbath rest made accessible to all believers.
Part 4. The ultimate fulfillment in Jesus, from archetype to Christ.
This brings us to the climax of this explainer, revealing the cosmic fulfillment of David's ancient prayer in Messiah Jesus. Take a look at John 14:27. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. Jesus' declaration in the upper room perfectly encapsulates David's realization. Divine rest is qualitative, and it's totally distinct from worldly security. The world offers peace through military might or economic alliances, but Jesus, the ultimate Davidic king, gives a peace that transcends all circumstances. As Martin Luther astutely observed, the literal historical sense of David's prayer actually finds its true head and fulfillment in Christ's passion and victory. Look at Luther's Christological reading here. First, it is ultimately the Son who calls and is heard by the Father in his distress on the cross. Second, just as David was vindicated against the elites, Christ's vindication establishes an everlasting peace for his body, the church. And finally, Jesus himself provides the ultimate pattern of rest for every individual believer conformed to his image. So the physical realities of Psalm 4 expand organically into cosmic fulfillments through Christ's once-for-all atonement. The ancient sacrifices, the light of God's face, they aren't just erased or discarded. Actually, scratch that. It's more like they blossom. They expand into their ultimate, absolute meaning through Jesus. The sacrifices of righteousness find their historical grounding on the cross, and the light of God's face shines definitively in Jesus Christ. It's an incredible organic unity across both testaments. As we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us pondering the very nature of true security in our own lives today. We still live in a world defined by political hostility, right? A world seeking vanity, lies, and economic instability. So what does this all mean for us? Here's the question I want to leave you with. In a rebellious world seeking vanity and lies, where do you seek your unshakable rest? Are you just chasing after material security, the green and the new wine? Are you looking to the ultimate king who guarantees an everlasting peace? Think on that. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep seeking the truth.